Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. We're in the zone. We are balmy, 50 degrees here in Westfield. It's Thursday. Pete Coles, Rich Sutter, back in the zone. Our last interview with Coach Chris Caputo from George Washington absolutely went through the roof and has set our all-time YouTube views high number. It was a great, great time. Really, really fun. And now we're back. And now we're ready to rock and roll, get through the week, and give you a really good update on what's been happening. College basketball is absolute pandemonium right now. The NBA is somewhat in a static mode, but the college basketball world is really exciting. It's upside down right now. But before we jump in to our Feed 'em Fish segment, I just wanted to jump off here with a little bit of something that's on a personal level. Every single week, I get boxes and boxes and boxes of mail from adoring fans of Pete. And they want me to get him his phone number. They want me to slide into his DMs. And I have bad news for everybody. Pete is off the market. Pete is engaged. Sorry, ladies. We just wanted to make that announcement. So please stop sending us all that mail looking for Pete's DM and all of his information. The other piece of it in the zone is we are going to be celebrating this week Pete Coles' birthday, Sunday. We do our research here. We do our research here on the show. Pete's going to be turning 30 on the 28th, and that's a day before.
Man, I wish.
Well, I'll tell you something. If you believe in astrology and the signs and all that other stuff, I think you're an Aquarius, right?
Correct.
You're the day before my mother was born as well, so you're in good company. You're in really good company. We'll say a happy early birthday to you, Pete, from In the Zone. All right, now we're going to fly into Feed 'em Fish. We're going NCAA Feed 'em Fish right off the get-go. We have John Calipari to start with. And he eclipsed his 400th win at Kentucky. Pretty good milestone. I give you some perspective. He had 516 games at Kentucky to do it. So it's 400 and 116. Go back and do your research and look at the number of cannolis that got devoured during that time. That'll add some perspective to that number. Okay, you have Bill Self, is 400. He got there in 484 games. So he was 484 during that time. You want to talk about home-style living. And then you also have, Gonzaga, who was Mark Few, got there 400, and he did it in 499 games. Those are some great accomplishments, though, nonetheless, okay? When you now look at SEC history, as far as coaching, you have Adolph Rupp is the leading wins guy in SEC history, the legendary Adolph Rupp. And then you go into some interesting names that are there, because Rupp has 846 wins, but he had a couple of wins. He's around 876, I want to say, because he had some wins before Kentucky entered the SEC. And then second on the list, I was really, really surprised to find this name there in the number 2 spot. I know he had great success, but I didn't know that he had this type of longevity. But Billy Donovan is second on that list. I was really interested to see that in terms of SEC wins. The great Dale Brown, Shaq O'Neal's coach, college coach, Dale Brown, the preacher. He's third on the list. And now we put Calipari in fourth. So that's great news for Kentucky fans, for Coach Calipari. Great accomplishment. 400, at Kentucky. He's got wins other places as well, too. So, Coach Calipari, hats off to you. Donovan Clingan returns for the Huskies, and they also return to our top 25 number 1. The Huskies are tough. They play really good defense. They are really, really capable of operating on both sides of the basketball and do a really good job there. That's why they're our number 1. But it's a little tight at the top there. I think it's pretty good. We still have our segment of Young and Winless Pete, unfortunately. This soap opera continues. And we just wanted to illuminate a little bit of, sometimes when we talk about the weapons of math destruction on this show, we talk about a segment where the algorithms are set up. And so we wanted to tell you just a little bit how crazy some of those algorithms are, because there's one now that I like is Torvik. He's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, and Ken Palm, both of them are good. But what happens also is your algorithm at some point it will have fault to it, because this is human. And as much as you think Alabama belongs in the top 10, with 6 losses, 7 losses, you just can't do it, because you look at it and look at the body of work of the other teams and say it's just not possible. But when you only look at numbers only, it becomes interesting. But Mississippi Valley State still has not won a game. They're sitting there, and it's terrible. They're 0-18, but they're also 363 in a Ken Palm rating. And I believe Torvik, I have that look. I'll look at it again. I believe he has them down at 363. That's DFL. That's dead freaking last of everybody in the country. Now, we talked a little bit about the setup that happened there with the coaches, I think, that didn't go well with the schedule that they took on, the guarantee games that they're playing. But Detroit Mercy still hasn't won a game. But here's where I kind of wanted to expose their algorithm a little bit. This is when I did this. Now, I think it's changed a little bit. I haven't gone back and checked it. But Detroit Mercy was at a 359 out of 363. So that means they had 4 or 5 teams in the middle between them and Mississippi Valley State. And you'd sit there and say, well, how bad were those teams? That they could win games and still not be ahead of a team that won 0 games.
Right.
You'd look at an algorithm and expect to find Mississippi Valley State at the bottom and Detroit Mercy right next to them. And I would have Detroit Mercy at the bottom, because their schedule at Mississippi Valley State has to count for something. They played 10 teams that are in the top 50. They have no business playing, and they had no chance to win. They did that 10 times. So that should count for something if you're really going against 2 teams that haven't won. But then you had Coppin State was in the middle, IUPUI, and they may be transitioning to Division I, because they had a bunch of Division II teams on their schedule. So that's possibly why they get hit. But they did have some Division I wins. I mean, when I looked, they were 6-15. And the algorithm had them rated below Detroit Mercy, who hadn't won a game.
Wow.
Hadn't won a game. All right, just to update again with our Quad 1 wins, which are important as we're now, believe it or not, folks, we're beyond that halfway mark in college basketball. We're starting to sled downhill in a toboggan very, very quickly. You'll see February disappear like nobody's business. I've always said once you hit Martin Luther King Day in this business, it's really downhill from there. It's really on a sled. It just goes so fast, so quick. Before you know it, you'll be in the great conference tournaments that are coming up, and everybody will be selecting their bracket. As you're selecting your bracket, you want to know what everybody played before you select that bracket. What was their schedule like? And so Quad 1 wins is just a quick way of giving you a little bit of stuff. So we're just going to do the Big East for you right now. All right? In Quad 1, you have UConn at 6-2. That's solid. You have Nova at 6-3, although they got pounded by St. John's last night. That's not a Quad 1 loss for them, but because St. John's isn't in the Quad 1, but they absolutely got pounded. So when you're looking at the algorithm, you're looking at their strength of schedule. That loss to St. John's hurts more than a Quad 1 loss does. And so they got pounded last night by St. John's. Seton Hall was doing good, 4-4. They just recently took it on the chin too. The Big East is a beast, and anybody can get anybody in that league. That's one league where anybody can really get anybody on almost any given night. It's a great league, very exciting.
A lot of parity in the Big East, right?
A ton, Pete. A ton of parity. Atlantic 10 has a lot of parity to it. There's a lot of conferences with a lot of good parity, and that makes it exciting. I think the problem that the Atlantic 10 has is it's Dayton and everybody else. They have great parity outside of Dayton. Dayton has kind of they've kind of
eclipsed
separated themselves. And now they're in the top 25 in the coaching and the AP poll. So, and they're in ours as well. So I think that's kind of rare territory for Atlantic 10 teams. And the rest of the league, unfortunately, is bouncing off each other and knocking each other out. And that's going to really, really make it, I think, a little difficult for the A10 to get into a situation where they're going to draw multiple bids in this thing. But let's continue down. Creighton is playing good basketball right now. They have a pretty good team. They're solid, but they've been knick-knacked up a few times too. They're 3-3. St. John's is 2-5, but that win over Villanova, I don't think that Villanova will be a quad one win, but they might have been. So that might help St. John's a little bit. Xavier is 2-5. Then it gets to bottom. Butler is really, really tough. They're capable of beating anybody. And that was a team that beat Seton Hall the other night pretty good. I was really surprised at that. And then Georgetown and DePaul. So we're going to talk about DePaul also just very quickly as well. I'm not sure we're going to jump into it right now, but we can if we want.
Hey, your show, you can do whatever you want.
Right. DePaul is like 3-15. DePaul has been bad for a really long time. They're one of the programs that's fallen and can't get up. Now, St. John's has brought in Rick Pitino, superstar hire. They're trying to get up, but they've also found just changing the coach doesn't change everything about your program. The things that were holding down the program before are still there. And unless you change those things, you're still going to just be changing the linen and the laundry when you change your coaches. DePaul is a perfect example of that. Dave Lado has been hired there twice in the last 20 years. They've had this young man, Stubblefield, now that 3-15, they just let him go in the middle of the season. And so you're going to now see what we refer to on our show as the coaching carousel. You're going to see that start to spin and turn as well. That's a little bit early, January, the middle of January, but things are going bad. People had put the bad mouth on Kenny Payne at Louisville for a little while too, that it might pull the trigger there or something like that. I just, I don't know how many athletic directors listen to our show, but I just would say that it would have to be really bad to change in the middle of the season like this. You would have to have a really, really, really valid and salient reason for me to go in and do this change in the middle of the basketball season. The season will be over in a month and a half. You'll be able to make your change. You'll be able to get into a coaching mix. You, DePaul, have shown no ability to pick the right person in the last number of changes and coaches that you've had. And so now to express that you have some type of urgency, some type of need to jump on top of this right now is comical. And Coach Stubblefield was working hard with the team and doing a good job. I've seen them play a few times. They certainly hadn't laid down. They certainly are not non-competitive, although they're not very good either. But in the middle of the season, I would say that's inappropriate to do to the young man in that program. It's inappropriate to do to the coaching staff, to everybody just involved, because you could have done it in the beginning of the year if you really felt strongly about it. But now you're watching the team struggle. All indications were that they would struggle, and now we're shocked and surprised at that. I'm a little taken aback by that, but that's again Chicago, Pete. I don't know what's happening in Chicago.
It smacks of desperation.
It smacks of desperation, but it also just throws in the towel for the rest of the year. Yeah. You have a conference tournament we've watched teams in the history of this thing get hot at conference tournaments time and go all the way and start the dance. We've watched it happen, and to now basically pull the plug on your team is what you've done. You've taken every chance of that occurring basically out and thrown it out the window. Unless, like I said, when there's a really tough situation sometimes, let's go with Huggins maybe. That situation was really difficult. West Virginia kind of had its hand forced. But this, I think, is just more about the losing. And when that occurs, let me ask you this, Pete. Do you think this will make it better?
No.
You're 3-15.
No, because if you had any chemistry,
make it better,
or you're building any chemistry, now that's all gone.
Exactly. So let's slip into this NCAA bit a little bit. They have gotten sued. They've gotten knocked around. They don't even know how to defend their own position, if you ask me. But they've basically opened the gates and let some of the players who had been held out become eligible immediately. One of the beneficiaries of this is Kentucky, who had a young man sitting out, waiting and pending an appeal. And I guess this takes out all appeals. I don't know if just is related to transfers, in the times that they've transferred, because you have some young men now that have been in multiple schools, multiple years, competed right away, and then you have some who are being held out, and so the courts have almost are going to step in here, I think, and I don't think the NCAA even knows how to defend their position. But one of the beneficiaries of this, I think, is going to be Kentucky, because they picked up this young man by the name of what I'm going to refer to him as the Big Z, because the rest of his name is just way too hard to say. But I'm going to take a shot at it. It's Zvonimir Ivisic, and they just got him through. That he was in an appeal, waiting. He's 7 foot. Came into his first game, played 16 minutes, and produced 13 points, 5 rebounds. 3 block shots, 2 steals, and 2 assists. Just really lit up the board and lit up the crowd in Kentucky as well too. So if any of this mess that's going on, where it's just kind of like, okay, everybody who have been sitting waiting on appeal is now eligible to start playing basketball, with about 15 games left in the season, if there is that many left, I think now that's one place where it could have a really, really significant impact. Really, really significant. He's huge, and he can play. He looks like an NBA body, and he looks like he can do some real stuff. And Kentucky was pretty good before they had him. Again, Pete and I allude to this, I'd say more than any one concept on the show, is that chemistry now becomes an issue. Can Coach Calipari bring this young man in, absorb the minutes that he's going to need to be an effective player, while somebody else takes those minutes away? It's one of the things in basketball is if you're a coach, if you look at it through this lens, it's maybe a little bit easier. I started looking at it through it this way a long time ago, and it really helped me. You have 200 minutes in the game. You have 5 positions that play 40 minutes apiece. You have 200 minutes. You have 100 minutes per half, and you have 5 players out on the floor at all floor times. 5 players. And so they'll be absorbing minutes every single time that they're out on the floor. At the end of the day, it's going to add up to 200 minutes. Now, Coach Calipari is confronted with putting maybe an NBA prospect who could turn this team into a title team, into another Kentucky national championship team. And how does that mix with the rest of the young men who've been there from day one, working really hard, didn't get held out by appeal, didn't get held out in a portal waiver, didn't get held out. Now, how do you take their minutes away because there's only 200? And so that's a little bit of a dance that a lot of coaches do. I can tell you this: it's not easy to do when there's limited time. You bring in a transfer and he has limited time. It's not easy to do it that way. And when you bring in a transfer that comes in a lot of the ways that they're coming in now, it's a lot more difficult as well. It's a lot more difficult to keep everybody on the same page.
Yeah, you'd have to get the entire team to buy into that concept.
And you can't get the entire team to buy into a lot of things these days. So I'm buying into a concept like that where they're all going to give up something. Somebody's going to be giving up something. I'm telling you, it's not that easy.
Right.
And now to do it with 15 games left, that's good luck. Good luck to them. I hope it goes well. He's the problem that they're having is he's as good as he portends to be. I mean, he's a really good player. And so what do? Do you take a chance? Knowing Calipari, the way that I've watched him and know him over the years, he's going to take a chance.
Yeah, he's a gambler.
This young man's going to find some minutes.
Yep, he's a gambler. Yep.
Well, I wouldn't say that I blame him. I wouldn't say that I blame him on this one. His job is to win. When he doesn't win, he gets criticized to the roof. And so when you're under that circumstance and you do whatever you can to win, sometimes it's a little bit more explainable. Some of the other stuff, not so explainable, but some of this, now you have a great player and you just say, we're going to put him in, or no. I think you're inclined more to say, let's put him in. I think most coaches would go that way too. Yep. All right, so we got some conference buzz for you that we just wanted to list down here in the fish. We got America East. They're going UMass Lowell. They've got Vermont, who's been the power in that league for a long time. It'll be the first time that they lost a title in a long time. But you also have Bryant taking over with the young Martelli coach, and he's doing a good job there. They're 4-0. So you got 3 teams that are undefeated in that conference, and they're all going to battle it out. So that was pretty interesting. In the America Conference, you've got Charlotte playing real good basketball out there. This program is resurrected. They're 5-1, and they're right in a battle with Florida Atlantic, who's gotten a lot of national coverage. Charlotte snuck in there very, very quietly and doing well. The aforementioned Atlantic 10. We've got Dayton at 5-0. You also have Richmond at 5-0, hanging right there with Dayton. And Loyola Chicago, surprise team, 5-1. 5-1. The ACC, you're looking at a little bit of bifurcation there. And the bifurcation is going to be bad for the Dookie fans because they now have a couple of losses in the league. They lost to Georgia Tech. They lost to Pittsburgh. They got a couple of losses in the league right now. And the Tar Heels are now 7-0, playing great basketball. They've won about 9 straight, maybe 10 straight coming up, and they're really, really playing good basketball. So they're separating. They're separating in the ACC. The Big 12 is a little bit surprising. I watched Kansas State last night against Iowa State. They had a great, great basketball game. That league is really, really tough. Texas Tech is 4-1, so is Kansas State, and they're at the top of the conference, and I don't think anybody would have picked that. In your Big East for the local fans, you got the UConn Huskies are soaring a little bit there. They're 7-1 and doing good stuff. Seton Hall was doing good. They had a tough loss to St. John's the other night, but they were doing pretty good before this happened. All of the Big 12, all of the Big East, every team in that league within that conference now has a loss in both of those conferences. That speaks to how tough those conferences really are. The Big 10, Wisconsin is the surprise team there. You got Purdue with 2 losses already. They're a little bit like Duke. Their losses have been in league, which are kind of like double losses. So that's rough. That's rough. You got the Drexel Dragons are, at 7-0, and that's a resurrected program very quickly. Done a good job there. They're in a tough conference as well. Quinnipiac Bobcats, they're 6-1 atop the MAC. St. Peter's College is 6-1, hanging right there. Fairfield is 6-2. They just added Mike Jarvis Jr. to the staff, and I'm going to give a shout-out to the people down in Fairfield. Lift the interim tag from Chris Casey. Take the interim tag off of him. He's done a great job with this team. He's a proven head coach in the MAC. Give him the shot. He's done a great job with this team. A little surprise in the Patriot League is where Colgate has been dominant for many a year now. Really done a great job with Matt Langle. Lafayette has resurrected their program. They went through a little bit of a turnstile early last year, but this young man's got them playing, and they're doing pretty good basketball. 6-0, 6-0, and Auburn, the SEC. They threw us into a little bit of a tailspin last night. We didn't want to jump in and change the poll, but they lost to Alabama last night in a payback game. They had absolutely throttled Alabama the first time out. Then they had to return the game to Alabama. It was a close game, but Alabama came out victorious. Okay, in our last fish section here, Pete, we had talked about this, and now it's happened. So we've talked about all the storming of the basketball court, and we're saying somebody's going to get hurt, somebody's going to get run over.
Yeah.
We've seen the video. Everybody's looked at it. And what happened is it happened to the queen, Caitlin Clark. There was no more of a poster situation to sit there and say this might not be the best thing to do, And let's give everybody a bone, okay? Let's see if we could create, because storming the court's cool, Storming the field is cool. Not cool when you take the goalpost down, or not cool when you wreck the joint, but it's cool when they storm.
Right.
It's a big win for the school, and I'm okay with that. Could we make it a rule that you get like a really, really crazy, because somebody just got fined like $100,000. One of the schools got fined for their storming the court. They got fined. And so do you make it this really stiff fine if you storm before the players leave the court? Let them shake hands. Let them leave the court, then storm. Then you can come on the court. Then you can dance. Then you can do your thing, and you can celebrate the win.
That's also showing the players some common decency.
Just get them off the floor. Some of these players are...
Or get them to the bench.
Just get them out.
Get them to the bench.
Yep, just get them out. Because also, where these rivalries are. They're tough rivalries, and to have all of these fans around these young men that they don't like, I don't think that's healthy at all. So if there's any hope for the storming situation, I would say Caitlin Clark right there is going to draw some attention to it. And I would not be 100% sure that those fines are not going to increase. It was 100,000. I forget the school that got it, but somebody stormed. Somebody got a big, big fine. I think those fines will increase. But what's also going to happen is we're in liability situation now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Some
What
great-
happens if she was
so-
injured and out for the season?
and she's chasing a record
Right.
now to become the all-time leading scorer.
That's what I'm saying. What
You
happens
know.
if her season ended because somebody tripped and broke her ankle or broke her leg?
Right, and so she's wants to play in the WNBA. You know, you're going to have some of these young men who have NBA futures, who are future first-round draft picks, and people are running out there, you know, clip them, and then the knee goes out, and, you know, it's just not a good situation. So, again, it's I wrote an article on Substack, and the basic premise of the article was talking about the NIL, but I basically said, who is the greatest punter in the history of sports? And then I went with the answer underneath it. I said, the NCAA. They're punting all over the place, way, way deep downfield.
They're so deep in it, they don't even know how deep they are.
They really don't. Okay, so we jump into the NBA fish a little bit. We have the trading deadline coming up February 8th. We have pretty stagnant as far as, you know, your top teams and not a whole lot of movement from the bottom. But there has been some movement, and we're going to look at it very close as Pete has drawn up a brand new Power 15 chart for us, and we're going to look at that in just a second. But you're looking at there's some movement within that 15, and that's the interesting part. You got some teams on the rise. You have it, and the movement isn't really coming. The Celtics are holding. The Celtics are holding, but right under the Celtics, there's been a little plate tectonic, and then in the middle of it all, you had some teams that were out kicking their coverage a little bit, who are now falling back to the pack, and you have some people that you expected, yeah, they might be a little bit better than that. Now they're starting to rise, so that's what's been going on there. The Hawks got an injury report with their best player, Trae Young. He suffered a concussion. Zach LaVine for the Bulls, ankle sprain, both of them out. They're going to be out for a little bit of time. The trade deadline is bringing a lot of smoke. Adrian Wojnarowski, one of the great NBA analysts, St. Bonaventure man, a great, great analyst for everything, will have his phone ringing off the hook until the deadline. And I'm sure there's going to be some movement. I would say you would look, if you really want to know where you might see some movement, I think the Knicks might keep moving a little bit. I think the Lakers, if they're smart, would try and make a move. And I would not be surprised to see the Golden State Warriors try and make some action as well. But stay tuned, and we'll go. All right, so you got a situation out here where they have a press conference. Greg Popovich, he's out there, coach of the Spurs, long time. He sticks around to help Wembanyama. And they ask him, how are you going to defend Joel Embiid coming into the 76ers game? And Popovich's response was, we're going to hammer him. We're going to tell Wemby, get in there and just hammer him. Just go right at him and hammer him, put him down and go right through the rim with him. So I just wanted to say a little bit that in San Antonio, you might kind of want to work on your strategy a little bit and tweak it just a tiny bit, because somebody might have played that clip for Embiid and he dropped 70 points on you. 70. I want to say it again. He dropped 70 points on them. Unbelievable. We will hammer him was a direct quote. 70, 18, and 5. Had time scoring 70 points for 5 assists as well. And I want to now just go one more time, because it's been a little off the charts. We said defense is dead, but oh my God, it really is now. You have Big Cat, Karl Anthony Towns, the Big Cat out in Minnesota. He dropped 60-plus points as well. Wow. He's a 7-footer who was 10 of 15 from three-point range. He dropped 62 points. He had 44 of them in the first half. Unbelievable. So those two games happened in the last week, and it was just unbelievable. Giannis went for 31, 17, and 10. He had a triple-double. So play a song for defense. Play a sad, sad song for defense, because that melody's dead. Durant went for 43, 6 rebounds, 8 assists. He's having a good season. You know, he's one of those guys that you just worry about him because he is a little bit older, but he really has a high skill level. And if he's open and he can get his shot off, he's going to really shoot at a high percentage. And one of the things that's so interesting about him is his length creates such shooting distance for him. When that ball gets up in the air, it's hard to, you're not going to block that shot. You're looking at 7 foot worth of wingspan, 8 foot worth of wingspan. All right, Pete, let's go right in to the Power 15. NBA, ooh, baby. We're looking at it, and it is a treat. Pete just gets better. So if you're looking at MVP consideration around here, it's not really a race. All right. So I'm loving this. The Boston Celtics have been able to hold this lead and really, really do a good job. Now, there is some trouble in paradise because when you have Celtics taking shots at Celtics, Celtic on Celtic violence is always interesting. And you wonder where it comes from. But shots were fired last week by the big dog himself, Kendrick Perkins, when he said, if you put Joe Mazzella's head in a brain in a bird, it starts to fly backwards.
What?
I couldn't believe it. Right off the top strand of the ring rope. And we've been critical of Coach Mazzella on this show as well. And last year more, during the playoffs when it was more under the microscope. But right now, I mean, they're 34-10. They've been number one in our top 15 for a long time now. I don't know what everybody's complaining about, but we're going to find out that the NBA is just strange, Pete. The NBA is a different type of world. When we get to our number 2 team, we have the Milwaukee Bucks, very fast rising team. They've been one of the biggest rising teams that we've had in our 15. If you've gone back, they weren't real low at any point, but they weren't really in that number 2 position where they are right now, 30-13. And as a result of moving up as in the zone, number 2, the management in Milwaukee heard that in the zone moved them to number 2. They told them, we said you're one of the rising teams in the NBA. You guys are cooking with gasoline. And they went ahead and fired their coach, Adrian Griffin. You gotta love the NBA, and I want to tell you who they replaced him with, Pete. Doc Rivers. It's Kevin Loughery, Gene Shue, Dick Motta, all over again. It's just a carousel, and all you do is turn it around. The 76ers are doing great right now. They had Doc Rivers, took him into the finals. They said, no, he's no good. We got to get rid of him. They brought in a guy that the Toronto Raptors had just fired, and so you just wonder and you shake your head. Now you go.
Why does Doc get no respect?
He just seems to be the guy you bring in when you have no, when the other guy's got to go and you want to stabilize a pretty good team. I think that's what happens with the NBA right now. Something must have happened there. Probably with Giannis and Lillard, they probably got turned off to Griffin for whatever reason. You have some coaches that are tough and disciplinarians in the NBA, very few of them that take that gamble, and that's not always well received by your superstar players. And so it could be part of it. And again, who knows? Who knows with the NBA what could be going on? So we're not going to even conjecture on that. But they're in our number 2 spot, and they were doing so good that they fired their coach. Okay, so Joe Mazzella, if I was you, I'd keep my eyes open because anything's possible now. Being number 1 in the zone, Power 15. Not gonna bring you any job security. All right, so the OKC Thunder pulling into number 3. This is what we were talking about, play tectonics. There's starting to be some movement. We love this team. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, one of the rising stars in the NBA, former Kentucky player. He's really, really cooking and doing some great stuff. And they're 30-13. They're right there. The Timberwolves tumbled. The Timberwolves did a little boy George, I'll tumble for you last week. They had a little bit of shake. They went to 30-13. They're still hanging on tough, but I dropped them a little bit because they just haven't been playing great. Even though when we talked about the big cat going for 62, the one thing that you want to make notice of that also is they lost the game. and Charlotte was the team that beat them, who's not even in our Power 15. So those are some of the things that make you go, in basketball, Pete.
Yep.
All right, so then we keep on moving. The Timberwolves are 4. 76ers move into the 5 spot, 29-13. Denver Nuggets are 6th. They're starting to play good basketball, but they got 14 losses. I think that's high, what people would have predicted for them in the beginning of the year. The LA Clippers doing a great job. They're coming up. They got a roster. They've got some pieces, and Russell Westbrook is coming off the bench a little bit, providing some sixth-man spark for them. And I would say over the last month, they've been one of the top hottest teams in the NBA right now. And the team that's coming up right now as the hottest team in the NBA, very, very surprising, are the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have a mixed bag out there of players. They're making it work, doing a great job, and they have won. At this time, when we were doing the Power 15, they had won 8 consecutive games in a row. Really, really doing good stuff. We moved them into the 8th spot. When we're talking plate tectonic in the NBA world, this is the Cleveland Cavaliers are there. That's who we're talking about. We're talking about the OKC Thunder. Those are the young guns that are coming up and moving and shaking here. And what happens when you have plate tectonics is something's going over the top of something else. And what's getting eclipsed are the Golden State Warriors and some of the other teams that you've heard of for years. They're getting eclipsed by these tectonics, and I love it. It's exciting. So the Cleveland Cavaliers, 8 in a row, playing great basketball. New York Knicks made a nice big jump in the trade. It's helped. 27-17. I'd say if you asked me when the season started, would you take 27-17 for the Knicks? I'd say every day and twice on Sunday. New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are playing good basketball, folks. They're 26-18. They're rising. We have them in the number 10 spot. And again, some of the shifting. That's the shifting. Now, this team we had out of the top 15 for a while just kind of broke its way into the top 15 a little bit a while ago, and now on the move. The Phoenix Suns are up in the 11th spot. They seem to be a little bit healthier than they have been. You have the situation where they got that 1-2 punch with Kevin Durant and the other guys that are there, the guards, but they have 2 really good special players. If Beal can get healthy, I think they're going to be much, much better there. So we'll see keep a dial on that, but they're in the 11th spot. Sacramento Kings are 12. We thought they would be a little higher, but they're young and they're building. Excuse me. So we'll keep an eye on that. The Miami Heat in the 13th spot, 24-19. They've lost 3 games in a row. Not good for them right now. They're having a little bit of a schedule boondoggle down there. They're really getting hit with some games on the road, and they've been out a little bit, and 3 in a row. Tough. And so it's not going to get any easier as we approach the All-Star break here. The Dallas Mavericks and the Indiana Pacers fill out 14-15. The Pacers traded for Siakam. I think that will hold water for them. We're still waiting for Tyrese Halliburton to return from that leg injury. The Mavericks are holding well. I said this last week. We'll say it again. Look at what the numbers that Kyrie Irving has put up, and you're really, really going to see some really good production there from Kyrie Irving. We've been critical of him on the show. Him and Luka, as they avowed and talked about, they're working on chemistry, working on getting it together. I don't know that they have a whole lot of other pieces there, but right now they're hanging in on a 15 spot. Okay, Pete, we're cooking with gasoline here, and we're going to move right into our NCAA top 25 with nobody occupying the number 1 spot the last time we put it out. We felt pretty good about that. We didn't feel like anybody really had deserved it. Now we're ready to go. We're going to get the Huskies howling down in Soares. We're going to get everybody excited. We call it the Caravan, and we are going to rock and roll with the UConn Huskies in our number 1 spot. They're playing great basketball. They're 17-2. They're in the Big East, which is a power conference and a deadly power conference as well, where you can get hit just about every single night. And so Ken Palm has them a little bit down. I like this team. Again, sometimes I'm going to look at their record. Sometimes I'm going to look at their body of work. Sometimes I'm just going to put them under the eye test. And I watched this team the other night, and it's remarkable, really, with the amount of turnover that they have. And some of those guys are doing really good stuff in the pros. You just look at the way that that the Hurley and company crew down there, the coaching staff, has been able to reload, recalibrate, and get this team right back after national championship level. They are the number one team in a lot of the polls. Some people have Purdue, some people have them, but right now they're the number one team. And as we alluded to last week, the first number one from the Big East in quite a long time. So I'm sure they're looking to hold on to that, but it ain't going to be easy. The good thing for them is they were off for a little bit of a segment here with a bye situation. So they're off from the 20th to the 28th. They got to sit as number one. That can really, really help at times. It can hurt also a little bit if it affects your rhythm, but it can really, really help as well because you can rest and repair some of your injuries. Klingen's been hurt, so it gets him a week off and gets him in the training room and gets the trainers, those magicians down there, a chance to work on that ankle and really get him back to full strength. So we're going with Purdue in the number 2 spot, Pete. The Boilermakers, they're sliding in there at 17-2. They could easily be number one. They've held on and done good stuff. The Big Ten isn't as tough as some of the other conferences right now, so they're benefiting from some of that. But they're doing well. They're really doing well. And this is what I alluded to earlier in the year, earlier in some of the shows, is does Purdue bounce back and have a Virginia scenario where they lost early, got clipped early last year to a team they should have never lost to? Then do they recalibrate, reorganize, and recommit to making that run with Zach Edey, the big in the middle? I think he's kind of shored up himself as a wooden candidate, and they're number 2 right now. So they're 17-2 out of the Big Ten. The Auburn crew last night went into Alabama, and they got caught up in that Crimson Tide. Tough game, really, really good game. I saw pieces of it, and they really, really fought hard on the road, but they just didn't have it. It was a very, very low-scoring game. Alabama played good defense, kept Auburn out of their usual spots. But right now, with that loss, they're 16-3. We probably would have moved them down. But when we did the poll, we had done the poll, and we didn't want to go back in and start shifting and changing. We'll catch up with them next week, and we'll drop them a little bit. North Carolina hanging tough. The Tar Heels right now could easily be number one. They've won 9 games in a row. They're playing very, very good basketball. RJ is leading the crew. We call RJ, the RJ means raining jumpers. He has been absolutely raining shots down on everybody, doing a fantastic job and really closing out his career. And he's going to really, really elevate himself into Tar Heel history as one of their great guards. Really, really going to have a great career. When you add all those numbers up and you know, some of the great accomplishments that they've had, when you add all that up, RJ is going to have some kind of record there to be dealt with. Kentucky, number 5, they just got bumped too. So, you know, again, we'll catch them next week. But again, this is the Big 12, the SEC, all of these conferences. Any given night, any given time, those teams are in peril. You go into a hostile environment, you can get bumped. And I watched that Iowa State-Kansas State game last night, and I like Kansas State's new uniform too. But, boy, that was a dogfight. They were going at it all night long, big shots, back and forth. It was great basketball. But that conference is tough, and it's loaded. You've really, really earned your baskets there. When you get a basket there, you've really, really earned it in that league. All right, so we're going to go with Kentucky in the number 5 spot. You know, we'll keep them, and we'll see, and we'll move. Kansas has been holding on 15-3. Ken Palm doesn't like them at all. He's got them way down there, but this is Kansas, 15-3, playing great basketball. Bill Self, legendary coach. I don't see why we can't keep them in the top 10. They haven't showed us anything to bounce them out, especially with some of the bouncing that's been going on. Because when you've been undefeated for a long time, you know, look, let's take Houston. One of the reasons we moved them down. I like Houston. I've been a big fan of Houston, but you can't. Ken Palm has them at number 1. You can't have them at number 1 when they were undefeated for a long period of time, which is somewhat of it's in Cannoli City for sure. And then when you step out and start to play in the real competition and go bang, bang, bang and lose 3 in a row, you got to drop. You got to go down. And we moved them down. I think I should have moved them even further, but it was just because there was everybody else was helping them stay afloat because they're going down too. Everybody's getting hit. This top 25 is like, I look at it every week, and I feel like I'm a young Dutch boy that's trying to plug up holes, and there's 10 holes, and every time I take my finger out to plug up that 11th hole, the 10th one opens, and it's like, oh my God, this thing is just constant, just water gush. I feel like I might be getting waterboarded by this top 25. It's been very exciting. I kid you not. All right, so we have Houston in the 7th spot. You know, they've dropped a couple of games. They're holding on tight, but again, that conference, nobody's coming out of that conference unscathed. And so we talked about that a little bit. The power conferences are carnivoring themselves. Look at the ACC. Look at what happened to some of those really, really vaunted basketball programs. Look at Louisville right now. Tell me the move to the ACC was healthy for them, for whatever reason. Look at the Syracuse team, the Boston College team, and tell me the move to the ACC was healthy for their programs for any other reason than their bank account. All right. So Texas Tech, I like this team. They everybody's going to get bumped. Everybody's going to get shifted around. But I have them, you know, they getting not a lot of respect in a lot of different places, but I have them ranked very high. They're Big 12, 15-3, and they're tough. They play really good basketball. Anybody who's in the Big 12 right now and you're 15-3, your team is tough. Those teams at the top of that league is tough. All right, Illinois in the 10th spot. They were very happy to get their player back. Their leading player, Terrence Shannon, is back. The court thing that's going on there kind of is going to be put on hold, I think, and he'll be allowed to play now. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if anything happens down there, but he's back, and they sustained a pretty good level without him and are holding on. So, and they're in the Big Ten, and they're doing well. Tennessee, I brought them back up 11, you know, because of some of the lack of elevation of some of the other teams. They're 14-4. Every one of their losses is credible, but they're also, you know, you say they're quad one losses. Yeah, I know, but you still lost every single one of them, you know. So we brought them back up. They're a credible team. I like Rick Barnes, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them get clipped a couple of times either, because a lot of these teams struggle offensively. And when you run into those hostile crowds where you have a really good defense that you're playing against, you're going to struggle. And so that's what I see with the future for Tennessee. This team, probably one of the surprises of the year. Wisconsin, a lot of people down in Wisconsin and all these different places you hear very critical of Guard, the coach there. And, you know, say what you want. You know, they're doing a great job there, and their resources, I'm sure they have great resources, but their ability to attract talent isn't what it is for everybody else. It's certainly not for Maryland and some of the teams that are in their league now. And so Wisconsin holding tight at 14-4. We got them in the 12th spot. Baylor, they got clipped a little bit. We had to move them down. We like this team a lot, but that's life in the Big 12. But if you look at this top 25 right now, the Big 12 is littered in this top 25. The Big 12 is all over this. All right, Oklahoma, Big 12 again. We say 15-3, but they lost 3 in a row. Pop, pop, pop here. They were undefeated for a while. They were 11-0, 10-0.
Pop, pop, pop means drop, drop, drop.
Pop, pop, pop means drop, 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 and we got to do it. We dropped them down. I wanted to even go further with them, but again, I couldn't because everybody else is falling out of my hands too. So Colorado State, they're holding tight, 15-3. This is a good team. That conference is a really good conference. They got some really good stuff going on there. They got some great teams. And again, watch this team go. If they can sustain in that conference, then you're going to want to pick them in your bracket because they're going through a really, really rigorous schedule over there. You got good talent over there, and you have. We're going to talk about. We brought a couple of their teams in. San Diego State got clipped a little bit. We were very high on them. We like them, especially for what they've performed over the years. But New Mexico is very good in that conference. There's other teams that are good in that conference. Utah State. And so those are the two we're going to talk about next. So basically, we gave 15, 16, and 17 to the MWC, where we went with Colorado State, New Mexico, and Utah State. Utah State's Rodney Dangerfield. They're getting no respect. They're 17-2. New Mexico's 16-3. And I'll tell you what, you want to knock New Mexico, you want to knock Utah State, go play them on their home court and see how it goes. You go down with the Lobos. They got locos with the Lobos. They got a crazy crowd down there. They call it the pit for a reason. And Richard Pitino has his team playing very well. Their front line is rugged and tough, and nobody's going to get out of there with an easy candy biscuit. And same with Utah State. They shoot, they space, they move the ball like crazy, and they will just knock you out with that three ball before you even know what happened to you. So we're going to go with Dayton. Dayton Flyers are flying up our chart, and why not? They're 15-2. I think they won again. It could put them at 16-2. They are bifurcating the Atlantic 10 in a way that we haven't seen in a while, where they're clearly the best team in. Richmond's hanging on, but I don't think anybody would argue. I'm sure they're soon to play each other soon, but I don't know that anybody would argue that Richmond and Dayton are in the same class right now. Although hats off to Chris Mooney and his crew because they've done very, very well. All right, love sliding these guys down. They got punked by one of their former guys. Jeff Capel took his Pitt team into Durham, and the Dukies got absolutely punked. They got knocked around. Physical Pitt team went after them, went around the basket on them, got to them with big shots. This young man was hitting shots from all over the indoor Cameron Stadium, not like you see it. And I'll even give Duke a little bit of credit on that one. Some of those shots were hotly contested. They contested them well, about as well as you could do without fouling. And that young man from Pitt was blasting out. They were rebounding. It was strong. And that's not even a middle of the road ACC team. So that's a bad loss for the Dukies. Drop them way down. I had them right next to Carolina. I wanted to pump that game a little bit, and now I got to drop them. Now I got to take them down because they're 14-4, and every time they come up against a team that has a little junkyard dog in it that gets really after it, you know, they fold up. They fold up. They don't have a very good identity on that team. I'll say that. The Duke Blue Devils don't have a very good identity on that team. They used to build their teams around defense, and they would have their star players. And right now, they have some star players that are pretty good, but they don't seem to have that identity built around it of what are we? What do we do? And I would say if I was them, I'd start pumping the ball down to Filipowski and the other big guy a little bit more. FAU, we brought them back. Pete, they're doing good. We saw them in Springfield. We like them. They're kind of wearing that target a little bit because of what happened to them last year. You know, they went to the Final Four. Now you're a Final Four team coming back with pretty much the same team. You wear a different target. You wear a different target. Creighton, 21st. I brought them back. I don't like the 5 losses, but they're really in a tough spot. Some of them losses have been not great though, and if I was a Creighton fan, I'd be a little bit nervous that they get into their spots. They have Trey Alexander, who's very, very good. They have some really good talent in and around him as well, but the blend sometimes doesn't work for me, and I'm thinking that team could be very, very good at the end of the year, or that's a team that's a little vulnerable and could be an early out in the NCAA tournament. We'll see how they fare in the Big East tournament. Coach McDermott's a great coach, though. He'll do a good job with them. He'll get it together. But, again, that team, it has knockoff written all over it to me a little bit. I like this team a lot. Utah, out west, a lot of people don't see them. They're in the Pac-12, doing a really good job. This team will shoot the lights out on you. They will absolutely shoot the lights out. When they're at home, they absolutely are deadly as they space the floor and they shoot the 3-ball with vigor. They shoot the 3-ball like that's their energy. They really live off of that. And then when they space the floor like that, they get some other good opportunities as well. So we're going to close out with Marquette, Ohio State, and Princeton. I put Princeton back in. They're 15-1. Some of these teams have 5 losses, 6 losses. Michigan State bouncing all around. Alabama bouncing all around like a pinball. I want to go in with Princeton. They were great in the NCAA tournament last year. They're 15-1 right now. Go play them. See what you can do with them. All right, Pete, that was awesome. Now, we wanted to talk a little bit about this thing that Goodman had put out last week. When we got caught up with Coach Caputo, we didn't have time for it last week. I think we got about 6 minutes left.
Yep.
So we're going to run through a little bit of it. It's a little difficult, you know, to kind of space out. I think Goodman did a good job with it. But I also want to talk about the upcoming carousel as well. You'll see Coach Dana Stubblefield from DePaul will be one of the early entries to the list. But In the Zone right now is predicting that we're going to get somewhere in the range of 40.
Wow.
45. And that's a pretty high number. It's been in the 60s in the past. But let's look through some of the numbers. He says Kenny Payne from Louisville is one of the worst hires of all time. I would, I think it's been hard on Coach Payne, and I'm glad Louisville hasn't fired him in the middle of the year. I don't know what they're going to do with him at the end of the year. He's only been there 2 years, and so I wouldn't really think that that's a good move unless you can tell me. And this is what I ask of all these schools: tell me who your next guy is. Tell me who you got. You're going to say no to this guy. Tell me who you got. I think you're going to see some things that make you go though. And I'll give you a couple of those names coming up, but not right now. He talks a couple of other ones. Greg Heyer from New Mexico. Kim Anderson, Missouri. I don't know about that one. I mean, I guess so. 27-68 while he was there. That's not a great record. Billy Gillespie at Texas Tech. He went 8-23 before they bounced him after 1 year. Not exactly sure what goes on with that guy, but it's been a downward spiral for him from being at the top of the game all the way down. I would venture to say that it's up there. It's up there as one of the hires. Jeff Bazilic, Kevin Stallings, Eddie Jordan from Rutgers, Joaquin Jones, didn't like that hire. Patrick Ewing, Matt Doherty. When he said Matt Doherty to North Carolina, I don't think that was such a bad hire because Matt Doherty was pretty successful at Notre Dame and had played at North Carolina, so they gave him the job at Notre Dame, pretty successful there, and then moved over to North Carolina and didn't hold it to the standard that they have. Some of these other names, Mike Dunleavy at Tulane, yeah, that wasn't a good one. Billy Gillespie, if your name comes up twice on the list, that's not good. James Johnson, some other names on the list. But Orlando Antigua, Bronx guy, Bullet Head from St. Raymond's, they have him down as one of the worst hires of all time. So with the few minutes that we have left, though, we can talk about, we're going to talk about Dana Stubblefield and DePaul as being really pretty much the first one that's open. Now, there might be some also that are open as well right now that you can talk about with a little bit of vim and vigor because you can speculate right now whether you think the person that has the job currently is going to last. So you look at West Virginia. That job is open because of Coach Huggins last year, fired very, very close to the start of the season. They implement an interim, as they call it in the business. It gives somebody a chance, albeit not a great one, but I think West Virginia was probably a chance where you might have had a shot to survive because they had a pretty good team. But then there was some bouncing around, some players in, some players out. So you really never can tell. And being an interim is really, really difficult, even under the best of circumstances. So now you have West Virginia as a situation there. You have Fairfield. Right now you basically have 3 jobs that are open. Chris Casey has taken the Fairfield job. We just put in a plug for Fairfield to remove the interim tag from him. But it might not also be a bad idea for Fairfield to take a look, evaluate everything at the end of this year, because there has been a lot of running around out there. They had to fire almost the entire coaching staff, bring in new people. Coach Casey was the one that was on staff that they chose to lead the program forward. I think he's done an admirable job, and I think he has a pretty good resume in order for Fairfield to give him the nod. But let's see how we do there. I would say that they would do it, but they might be prudent to wait till after the season. Now, you also have situation at Louisville is an absolute disaster right now. I don't know what they're going to do with Kenny Payne. I don't even know. I would really, really have to take a look at it. After 2 years, can you even validate firing the young man? Have you given him enough chance to do well? Or are you sitting there saying, we used to be a great program, and now we're not? And that's part of it. So I would say that, Louisville is another situation that you might want to keep your eye on as well. There'll be other situations that pop up as well. And some of them will give to you, and some of them, are going to be obvious as they come. Because right now, when you have the first one, generally that kind of frees everybody up that's thinking about doing it to do the same thing. And so I would say that you're going to have a pretty static East Coast pretty much with this business, although there will be some movement. Where you might see some movement is in some of the coaches, and we'll save that for next week, is some of the coaches we like that are young and that when these jobs eventually do open up, if West Virginia does open up, who are the young people we see as really good candidates to take that job? Now that DePaul is open, we're going to get you a list of people we think that might be really good to fit DePaul. You know, Drew Valentine jumps into my mind, a young man at Illinois Chicago. You have some other pieces out there that would fit very, very well there. But right now, you have to look at DePaul and say, what are the resources that we're lacking? What are the other pieces that we're lacking in order to bring this new coach in and not set him up to fail? All right, Pete, I think we're out of time.
Yes, we are.
The fastest hour in college basketball, folks. Thanks all the people, absolutely, who watched. We had the best week last week watching it. We love it. And for all of our fans out there, thank you so much for doing that. And again, Pete, have a great birthday. Have a great one, and we'll see you next week, folks.